Okay, ready? All right, so let's just kind of review. We talked about God, we talked about creation, and we talked about the church last class, and we talked about how the church, the Catholic Church, is the church that Jesus founded. And today we're going to talk about sort of the mystical side of the church, which is called the communion of saints. And one thing that makes us distinctively Catholic, and this is something that goes all the way back to the beginning, it's a Christian thing, it's not just a Catholic thing, because remember at one time we were all one church, is we venerate the saints. Okay, now notice I don't say we worship the saints, we venerate them, which is another word for we honor the saints. Now, I hope that this teaching will help you, especially if you lost loved ones and you struggle with someone who died that was close to you. Because I think there's this, in the pagan world, basically, I don't know what people think, but there's some pretty crazy ideas about what happens when you die. Some people believe you just die and that's it. Sort of fatalism. You just turn into nothing. Sounds pretty bleak. Then it seems like there's no purpose to life. Some people believe you come back as a tree. That's ridiculous. Now, how would you go from being a human to an oak tree? Seems lame, right? But actually some people believe that, and they think they're intelligent. We believe, as Christians, that life doesn't end after death, and that we are in union. That's the word communion, that's what it means. Communion means in union with those that have died. Now, next class, we're going to talk about what happens at death. We're going to talk about death, and then we're going to talk about heaven, hell, and purgatory. So some of the teachings today will, like purgatory, will get more explicit next time. And I know there's a lot of questions about that. But let's just kind of focus on this concept that we are all in one family, but there is more than just what we see here today. There are three parts of the church, okay? Now look, there is the church triumphant. Now the church triumphant are all those that have gone before us that are now in heaven. Triumphant means they've conquered, they're victorious, they've made it. And they are constantly interceding for us because we're a family and they want their family members to come home. And then we are in what's called the church militant. That means we're in this sort of battle, this daily battle, to become holy, to say no to sin, yes to grace, to give of ourselves, and to become like Christ, which is not easy. And as the Catechism says, at a great expense. It's costly, it costs us, it can tire us, right? And so we need sort of support. And then finally, we also believe, and we'll talk more about this next time, the church suffering, which are souls that are going to heaven. They've died, but they need to be purified. They weren't ready to go to heaven, and our prayers help them as their prayers help us. Some people don't realize that the church, the souls in purgatory, we call them holy souls, because there's no trap door to hell. There's only one way, it's up. Okay, we'll talk about that next time. But their prayers actually can help us. All right, so you realize, what does that mean? The communion saints means we are all united, the saints in heaven, us on earth, and the souls in purgatory are in this union with each other. And we help each other. Okay? Now, how many people here were in the military at one point? Okay, maybe 3 or 4. In the U.S. Army Combat Handbook, it begins like this. Modern combat is chaotic, intense, and shockingly destructive. However, even in this confusion and fear, remember that you are not alone. You are part of a well-trained team, backed by the most powerful combined armed force and the most modern technology in the world. So when men or women go join the military, they read this and they realize they're going into danger, but they realize also that they're being supplied with some of the greatest technology and they're never alone. At least supposed not to be alone. Now, this gives them great confidence that they're not alone, but we, as Christians, are also never alone because we have this communion of saints. All right, now, how are we united? I'm just going to talk about certain ways. And the catechism, open your catechisms, if you will, to number 950. Okay, now this class today is basically, it is 946 in the catechism to essentially, let's see, 975. Okay, that's, all right, now if you look at number 950 in the catechism, I'll read this slowly. It says this. Hold on one second. Actually, let's go back a little bit. Let's go to 948. The term communion of saints, are you with me? Therefore has two closely linked meanings. Communion in holy things and among holy persons. All right, so what it's saying there in the catechism is that in holy things, and what we mean by that, in things like prayer and things like the sacraments, we are united with the saints. Now, what's the holiest thing the Catholics do? We call it the Holy Mass. Okay, the Mass. We don't call church a service. All right, so from now on, when you come and see me after Mass, don't say nice service. You say, that was a beautiful Mass. Just a pet peeve of mine. All right, services are down the street. We have the Holy Mass. Okay? Now, the saints, some of the saints had these mystical gifts. They were able to see things we don't see because they're extremely holy. And there was a conversation with one of my favorite saints, Padre Pio. Have you ever heard of him? Padre Pio actually lived in the 60s. You can actually YouTube one of his final masses online where you can actually watch him celebrate Mass. And Padre Pio, when he was a young friar, he was a Franciscan friar, God gave him a strange gift, which he received what's called the stigmata. You ever heard about that? The stigmata is, some saints were given this strange gift where they actually were given the wounds of Christ on their hands, their feet, and on their side. And during Mass, the wounds would bleed while he's celebrating Mass because we believe that the Mass and Calvary are the same sacrifice. We'll get to that later. So this saint became sort of a show because everyone wanted to see this guy who had the stigmata. So people would come from all around the country and the world to talk to him. But he also had some interesting gifts. He had the gift where if you came to him, he would read your soul. So a lot of times people are they're trying to hide something. He goes, okay, what happened last Tuesday? Like, oh, okay. And they bring it up. People were afraid to go to confession. They go to him because they knew he'd get it out of them anyway. All right, just a very spectacular